Okay, the another way to see the absolute truth within is by looking into our preference. Um, you know, we all have preference in life, isn't it? We have a preference on how we do things. From the morning till we go to bed, and if we step back from our engagement and look into our preference, and if we step back on the preference on why we have the preference and why we prolong the preference and why we feed into the preference, is a simple way to get back to the true self. How this preference come into us is through our experience. Life is about going through the experience, and when we are going through the experience come in a dual aspect, likes and dislikes. And when the things are going well, we try to hold on to those experience in us as an idea, and we prolong that idea to invite the same experience. And prolonging the experience itself brings a lot of conditioning in us, conditioning in the body and mind, and eventually turn into a preference. And holding on to the preference is because the preference is giving us the positive way of life. Preference is the momentary freedom, momentary peace or happiness. And preference changes too. It changes when we are going through the uplifted experience. When the experience is upgraded, the preference starts to change as well. And no matter it's upgraded preference or not upgraded preference, preference itself is a changing, and anchoring ourselves in the changing is a way to struggle. uh, so not to struggle, or to overcome the struggle, we need to figure out something that is unchanging. And the unchanging is the true self which exists within us. And to see the true self, everybody has to do some work, by dismantling all the preference or all the belief in us. And that's the way to figure out the unchanging self, or the unchanging happiness or unchanging peace in us. All preference is the ego self, and the ego must dissolve to see the true self. Not able to let go the preference is because the preference has given us different coloring in us, in the body and mind. And because of that, we have a hard time letting go of the preference. um, and when we have a hard time letting go of the preference, that also shows that we have a fear in us. And because of the fear, it's the whole thing is kind of cycling back and forth again and again. Preference is there because of the fear, and because of the fear, the preference repeats again and again. When the repetition is going like that, that itself is a way to condition further in the body and mind. And conditioning is a way to limit ourselves, limiting ourselves. The reason to hold on to the preference is because preference has given us the support. And in life we don't want to lose the support, and we hold on to the preference to function in life. And holding on to any preference itself comes from the place of fear, not to go through the pain or not to go through the struggle. And we hold on to the ideas of preference. And holding on to the idea itself is a limitation, not able to see the absolute truth in us. Holding on to the preference itself is a way to go against the nature way of things. And when we go against the nature, it's a way to invite constant suffering and constant pain in ourselves. It is a way to be part of never-ending conflicts and never-ending fear within. To figure out the absolute world, the relative world has to be dissolved first, and not able to dissolve the relative world is because of the fear, is so strong that makes us bounce back to hold on to the preference. The way towards the absolute self is through the limited self. We can look into our limited self, that means we can look into our preference and we can dismantle the preference by stepping back on the preference. Why we hold on to the preference, what's the reason to repeat the preference, and 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 you know and we are still holding on to the preference, and going back on the preference is the way to see again the true self in us.